Thompson.
You're both with the Meadow Center for Water and the Environment at Texas State University.
And this is Fahrenheit 140.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to our first podcast, not only for Fahrenheit 140, but actually our first podcast ever.
How about that?
Yes. Hopefully we know what we're doing. Kind of ask your patience if it appears that we don't, but hopefully we know what we're doing. We both used to be college DJs, right?
That's right.
Carrie? Where'd you DJ?
Texas A&M.
Oh,
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
They probably force you to just do country music, is my guess.
No, prime time, midnight to 3 a.m. show on, called Dangerous Mood Swing. Anything goes.
Awesome. Yeah, I was a college DJ at New Mexico Tech, and kind of an anything goes too. Really into alternative music. Speaking of music, hope you all enjoyed that theme music earlier. I put that together. I wanted to put some theremin in there, so you hear some theremin, which is an electromagnetic instrument you play waving your hands around. And Carrie requested the yodeling, and I've not asked you until now, why did you want a yodeler?
Well, I just thought we should link this to Texas, because we're here to talk about things that matter to us at home.
Yeah,
so
okay. I was going to say, where do you get that? But, I guess, was it Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys?
Mm-hmm,
did they yodel?
And Don Walser.
Don Walser, of course.
And
oh,
the
my gosh,
Doughboys.
Don Walser. Yeah. Legendary.
That's right.
Don Walser. Kids, you can look them up.
Please do. Please do.
Let me tell you all a little bit about me. I was born in Chicago, but I grew up in rural northwestern Illinois. Yes, I'm admitting I'm not a native Texan. I'm a zeroth generation Texan. I was interested in rocks, pretty good at math, and so decided to pursue a degree in geophysics, which led me to Socorro, New Mexico Institute of Mining Technology. And while I was there, I was kind of looking to get in the oil business, but decided the oil business wasn't for me, and I got into the water business. And so hung out there and got a master's degree in hydrology. And then after that, when I got to Texas as soon as I could. So landed in Austin in 91 and worked for about 9 years at the State Geological Survey, the Bureau of Economic Geology. Worked on the superconducting supercollider site. Those old timers out there listening might remember that. And a number of really, really neat projects. Got involved in groundwater modeling, which pulled me to the state of Texas, the Texas Water Development Board, and I was there for 18 years. Wonderful place to work, a lot of great people, but I was kind of looking to get into the academic world, have a bit more freedom. I wasn't allowed to talk about climate change when I was at the state, and so that led me to the Meadow Center and Texas State University, where I've been for 3.5 years now. Carrie, let's hear about you.
All right, sure.
Enough about me. Let's hear about you.
Yeah, I agree. Enough about you. I am from a small town, a town that used to be small in Texas near Dallas, and I graduated with about 20 kids, and a very rural town that sort of main industries were cotton farming and egg farming, and no one really talked about the environment there, but I somehow kind of got religion, and actually probably happened at church. We started a recycling program, and I kind of became a little zealous, and then went on to find where I could study in Texas and learn about environmental science. And so I have my bachelor's of science from Texas A&M, environmental studies in the geography department there, and then I did go back to Texas A&M to study in the what then was new George Bush School of Government and Public Service. And I've always, even in my early days in high school, just knew I wanted to be at that place where people and environmental science come together, and, helping people understand the science and then helping the science apply in real life, in a way that people can use it and actually make a change. So my career has always followed that path, and I worked for the federal government for 20 years and also was not allowed to talk about climate change, but a lot of my work was related to climate change. And I was with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for 15 years and worked in coastal partnerships and private lands, agriculture partnerships, and all focused on endangered species, but usually about water as well in some fashion. And then I did a stint with the Nature Conservancy here in Texas, working on water in Texas, and went on to work for another federal agency focused on, they call it conflict resolution. I like to think of it as collaborative problem solving, and that's
It's more
really
positive. It's more positive spin on it.
it is a more
Yes.
positive spin, but it's also a better descriptor, I think, and that's still the work we're doing at the Meadow Center, and looking for ways to bring people together and be informed by good science, but also hear different perspectives and learn from each other, so that the outcomes are optimized by everybody's input, and then hopefully lasting. So, well,
I like what you said about the kind of the policy and science, and you got into it with more purpose. I kind of stumbled into it, and my view is it's all good. You learn as you go through your career, in part what you're good at, and in
right.
part what you don't like. Like early in my career, I thought I wanted to work outside, and I experienced one Texas summer, and I'm just like, nope, I want to be in the air conditioning, which is what kind of led me to groundwater modeling. But I also somewhat stumbled into the policy relevant science. It felt really good to work on science that meant something here and now, rather than basic science, which is more cerebral. Nothing against basic science, but
Right. You need it.
but for me, I just discovered that found that much more satisfying. And then in my career at the state, um, I kind of worked on my communication skills to where my bosses trusted me to go talk to the legislature and into legislators and to the public, and bring science to the public and help them understand. And so that's been a kind of also a motivation for me
Yeah.
to help people understand water and perhaps more broadly science, so they can make informed decisions about things. And so in a way, that's kind of what this show is about, right?
That's right. That's right.
This little podcast. Those of you that aren't familiar with the Meadow Center, we are a research institute at Texas State University, and as the name tells you, we're involved in water and the environment. We have a crew that does a lot of work with watersheds, coastal issues, advanced water conservation through One Water concepts. We also have pretty amazing education program on site. We operate at the headwaters of the San Marcos River with San Marcos Springs, the old Aquarina Springs. Although Ralph is gone, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to talk about pigs, am I? Although Ralph is gone, we still have the glass bottom boats, where anybody can come and learn about that special environment, learn about the endangered species, and more about water and the environment. And then we do a lot with, and I think more and more with policy. That's one of my interests is to do more at the Meadow Center in policy analysis, kind of help policymakers understand issues to make informed decisions. And then also, having been at the state for a while, and in the state of Texas not doing much on climate change, primarily for political purposes or reasons, I kept hoping that somebody in the academic world would pick up the torch. And so now I've find myself on the academic world, and I find myself picking up the torch. I say myself, this is a team effort. But there's certainly have a lot of interest in trying to get Texas ready for what's coming and what's happening now with climate change. I guess that brings us to I have a mission statement, which is kind of a geeky thing for the podcast, and Carrie is going to humanize it more. But I think the mission here is to help Texans better understand what climate change means for water and the environment.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, I think one of the things we're trying to do is bring attention to the things that are happening around us that we may not even see as climate change related, and really understand that so much of what's driving the world right now really is related to the changing climate. And so we're on a learning journey, and we thought we would try to bring y'all along with us.
Plus, having a podcast gives you a reason to call people up that maybe you would normally call up and say, hey, would you be on our podcast? We can have a conversation with them, so we can share that conversation
This is just
with
a
y'all.
platform for hobnobbing.
The other thing on the education part is there was a recent survey. It was a national survey, but it broke the results down by state. And the results suggested that 77% of Texans believe in human-forced climate change. I have to be honest with you, that was higher than I would have guessed.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of closeted climate change, human-forced climate change believers out there in Texas. But equally surprising is this next statistic, which is only 26% of Texans believe that climate change will affect them personally, and that ain't right. We're seeing effects now, and it's going to get more prevalent in the future. And so that's another hope, is to provide people with information to identify, and particularly in the water sense. We're going to see more intense droughts, more likely more droughts, more intense rainfall. Some folks may be like, well, if we're going to have more intense rainfall, why does that mean we're going to see more droughts? But the temperature is going up, and it's unquestionable the temperature has gone up in Texas. I've been here since '91, and it is a much different climate now than it was when I first moved here. And just that increase in temperature increases evaporation, increases the drying of soils, which decreases runoff into rivers and reservoirs and decreases recharge.
And we can see increases in participation, but see changes in precipitation patterns, where in the past we would have the same amount of rainfall spread over a period of time. We're now getting those dumps of rainfall, but they're spread farther and farther apart. So those of you in Central Texas right now, we're seeing a lot of rain. That's also uncharacteristic. We're having the wettest July in history, I believe, right now. So these are just new. The patterns are no longer patterns, and we're seeing new phenomena.
And this is kind of a great time to start this podcast. Although arguably maybe we should have started it 10 years ago. But there's a lot of bad news in the press this year, and bad things are happening. We had the winter storm Uri, where it's difficult to assign that to climate change, but at the same time, climate change is causing a more unstable Arctic area, which makes those events more likely. I think the scientists are still looking at that to kind of figure out how much of that may be due to human-forced climate change. The unseasonable heat waves or unheard of heat waves in the Pacific Northwest. Brand new record temperatures in North America, admittedly Death Valley, which is not exactly, Juneau, Alaska, but crazy high temperatures out there. So there just seems to be, unfortunately, more and more bad news that's coming in. Having said that, though, we plan to have fun with this podcast. This is a serious problem, clearly, but I thoroughly believe science, understanding, learning is fun. And so we will have some fun, but we'll have some serious moments. Carrie's gonna try to not make me cry.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, don't make me cry, Carrie.
I do think it's a kind of it is some hard news, and it's hard to absorb all the things that are happening, but it's also really important that we understand what's happening so that we can form a strategy. And the whole spirit behind this is to equip ourselves for battle and figure out what it is we're going to do about this. So
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I dabble in electronic music, and so when I was putting together the theme music,
Which is
I
awesome.
was leaning to. Oh, thank you, thank you. It's because of the yodeling, of
I
course.
mean, yeah, but
But it's pretty easy and I do tend to lean towards depressing music. I'm an old goth. But it was really easy to, you think of climate change to come up with some doomy music, and I was just like, oh, this is just too negative sounding. So try to come up with something a little uplifting. And I guess also embedded in the climate change issues we're facing is that the good news is we do have an opportunity to respond. And we have an opportunity to address these issues, and so there's hope. There's hope there, I believe. So,
absolutely. And if you have anyone on this planet that you love, then, what choice do we have but to try?
right,
So,
right.
you know,
So with that, kind of what we're planning to do with the kind of the outline of the show, subject to change, based on what works, what doesn't work, or new things we want to do. We're planning to follow a format of kind of starting things off with some hopefully interesting banter. Not as much as we've done this morning. You don't have to listen to our personal introductions and the Meadow Center introductions, all that jazz. But we plan on starting off with kind of some 2 to 3 news articles that each of us have seen over the previous month. And I should note, we are hoping to do this show on a monthly basis, and talk briefly about those. Then have a main topic, and kind of hoping that for that main topic, we do have interviews. So we have somebody that we're talking to that can add something to the discussion. The blurb on for us is, what is it? A climate change rant with a Texas slant, or
yeah.
climate rant with a Texas slant. We're working in Texas, and our research is in Texas, but climate change is a global issue, and so we're not necessarily going to restrict ourselves to Texas. I think I also feel like that things important to Texas, or things we learn in Texas, are also important for elsewhere around the country. But we'll have an interview, and so some of those guests may be national, maybe more local to Texas. And then we're going to end with some bright spots, a couple news articles to talk about that are more hopeful. We have the doom up front, and then the positive at the end.
And we'll post the links of all the good things we find each month, so folks can follow up after the show.
Cool.
Hey,
Well,
Robert,
yeah.
why'd you name it Fahrenheit 140?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. I had lots of brilliant ideas for names.
I mean, of course.
But of course, other people had thought of them as well. Like In Hot Water seemed like a good one for a water and climate thing. But ultimately wound up settling on Fahrenheit 140. And that one kind of came out of, I was thinking, Fahrenheit, temperature that water boils. What is it? 212? What does water boil at? I forget now.
Sure.
It's 100 C, I think, in Celsius. But French units but that somebody has a podcast called that. And then I'm thinking, well, what other, I like the Fahrenheit idea. What other thing could there be? And it's like, I wonder, what temperature does water scald people? And so, which is kind of an awful thought, I guess. But Fahrenheit 140 is, if you're exposed to water at a temperature 140 degrees, that'll scald human skin after 6 seconds. So it's that water temperature synergy there. I think it also has an echo of Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, the temperature that paper burns, related to censorship, because it can be challenging in Texas to talk about climate change. And I'm not saying we are being censored, but we both, in our introductions, having worked for the government, had been encouraged or strongly encouraged through threats of losing jobs of not mentioning climate change in public. To be fair, I should mention that out of my 18-year career at the state, there were 2 years that I was able to work on climate change and actually published a paper um, that talks about climate change impacts on Texas groundwater. Towards the end of George W. Bush's last term, and George W. had
As a
warmed up.
governor.
No, as president of the United States.
Okay.
He had, forgive the pun, warmed up the climate change at that point. And it was like it was okay to talk about it, but that door slammed shut after that pretty hard. So.
Well, I was at Fish and Wildlife Service at the end of the Bush administration, and we were still not allowed to use the terminology. And but we did put together a coastal climate change conference that took place the week of Obama's inauguration, and we had scientists from the IPCC and literally scientists weeping because their work had been stalled, their work had been stopped in many cases, and there was this sense of we have a decade to make up for, and it is a hard thing that to think about how far behind we are because of some of the politics. And we're not going to go there, and we're not going to share our personal politics, but that's just a fact. And we were not allowed to have scientific discourse around this topic for years.
And since you brought that up, I mean, that is a challenge for Texas, and politically, it's I also don't want to get political, but so speaking as an academic,
yes.
Spock ears on, the folks that are in the Republican Party, almost cannot talk about climate change. That is a litmus issue, whether they believe in it or they're concerned about it or not, elected officials. And so that because the Republican Party is in control in Texas, that is governing how the agencies are responding, or more accurately, not responding. And it is what it is. The way I look at it, I don't have anger about it, disappointment perhaps, but I don't have anger, and I kind of understand, certainly on individual levels, why certain politicians have to there are true believers or true disbelievers, perhaps is a better word, but politically it's difficult. So,
and I think that's why the power of talking about these everyday like these articles that we're going to talk about, and things that we're all encountering in the news right now, just taking the stigma out of just talking about what's happening all around us. It's not a political issue. It's a fact of life at this point. And so how do we take that political stigma off of it and just come together and figure it out?
And it's becoming clearer and clearer too. There just seems to be weirder and weirder things happening with the weather lately. Over the past few years, it seems to be accelerating these events, and if the state is not, or any state for that matter, is not even looking at what this might mean, say for water supplies, for flooding, for impacts on the environment, impacts on human health.
Or the power grid, or
the power grid
functioning,
that puts Texas at a disadvantage.
Absolutely.
That doesn't have to be there. So.
Right on.
So what do you got up first for news?
Well, I will go first because your intro here about the statistic where 77% of Texans believe in human-forced climate change, but only 26 believe that it'll affect them personally. Mm-hmm. There's an article that came out this month, actually, and originally from Yale, but then picked up by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, talking about this very thing. And the title is "Extreme Weather is No Guarantee of Support for Climate Action." And it speaks to the fact that, just like we were saying, there's signs of climate change are all around us. We're seeing them on the news every day. And even more and more Americans are acknowledging that they're living through some pretty weird weather and, unusual circumstances. But this just brings to light through some surveys that the things we know, and you even referenced earlier, that partisanship is actually really driving how people process this information. And I'm just going to quote from the article here. But even when a neighborhood, city, or region experiences truly unusual weather, some will see it as clearly connected to global warming, and others won't see that connection at all. Two individuals can share what seems to be an identical experience and come away with completely different conclusions about what happened and what caused it and what to do about it. So that's no surprise. But the
And,
breakdown was something like 60% of Democrats say they have personally experienced global warming, and only 22% of Republicans see it that way.
and it's this is the scientist in me speaking, and I should I'll just do a broad disclaimer now for all the show and all the future shows. I'm not a climate scientist, but I do read a lot about it. But it's interesting about that observation about two different people walking away with completely different interpretations of
Yeah,
a situation. What makes it one of the challenges I think for climate science is in a way they're both right.
absolutely.
Because
Right.
it's like say for example with Harvey, climate science can't say that Harvey would not have happened without global warming.
Hurricane Harvey on the Texas coast.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. What did I say?
Harvey.
Or Harvey, yeah.
Not the big rabbit,
Okay, I was
right?
like, oh gosh, I'm getting old, so I kind of like throw in random words sometimes. And so Harvey probably would have happened without human-forced climate change, but because it's a lot warmer, the Gulf is a lot warmer, the Atlantic's a lot warmer, there's a lot more moisture in the air because of the increased temperature. Harvey is stronger, and there was more rainfall associated with it. And scientists do kind of attribution analysis, and so they'll model Harvey and try to figure out what the climate would have looked like without human-forced climate change, and how strong Harvey would have been versus with human-forced climate change, and then attribute what part of Harvey was due to human-forced climate change. I forget the numbers. I want to say that the rainfall was maybe 40% more because of
Wow.
human-forced climate
That's
change. And
significant.
there's a couple of them, and it's an inexact science, but and that's been kind of one of the potentially frustrating thing is like, almost anything that happens, you can point to it as being climate change, but at the same
Right.
time, there's a natural component to it as well.
And there's always this element of doubt, and models are not perfect, and so
Right,
of course you
right,
can say there is nothing to back that up.
right.
So it's like you said, it's defensible whatever outcome
Hmm.
you take. But the other thing that was interesting in here, I thought, is that they found that only one type of weather really convinced people that they were in a climate change event, and that's hot, dry days.
Okay.
So being in Winter Storm Uri, not convincing. Being in the wettest July on record, not convincing. But if you have extended periods of hot, dry days that then lead to drought, people tend to be able to say, yeah, that makes sense that that's climate change. That's global warming,
Warming,
right?
yeah.
Because that
Because
lingo.
yeah.
Yeah. And they did mention the Texas drought of 2011 as being one of the most convincing events that they found in their survey.
Interesting.
12 years of data. And then what I just really liked at the end is they talked about this. This is kind of what we're trying to do a little bit. They talked about this weatherman in Columbia, Missouri, who has a show called Show Me Climate. And he is really trying to turn his weather forecast into a demonstration of like, this is what our weather is, and this is how it's connected to climate change. And he's bringing in scientists and really trying to break it down for folks and draw that connection. And the article closes with kind of what a big role that meteorologists actually could play, because they're in our house every day helping us understand what's happening around
What's that
us.
saying? It's climate is what we expect, weather is what we get.
That's deep.
So I have an article here that actually came out today from BBC News titled "Climate Change: Science Failed to Predict Flood and Heat Intensity." They're talking about the heat dome in Pacific Northwest, as well as in California. which we blessedly have avoided in Texas. It's like the good old days in July here, not being in the hundreds. But then also what's been happening this week is those kind of horrific German floods that have been occurring. And I guess what struck me about this was, this is me going to pick on a reporter, but it's like a reporter not fully understanding the science, and so the climate change models, there's some interviews in here where, it's clear the reporter said, well, how come the climate model didn't predict the flooding in Germany? How come it didn't predict the heat domes in the Pacific Northwest of the United States? And, and the response he's getting is, well, they're not powerful enough to have that accuracy, and which is an accurate statement, but it also suggests that if the computers were more powerful, we would be able to predict those things, and which I'm not so sure about. Climate scientists might disagree with me, but this relates back to climate's what you predict, weather is what you get.
Okay.
It's like I don't believe you could have a global climate model predicts, on such and such a date in such year, Germany is going to have historic floods.
Right.
It's not how it works. This heat dome is going to happen, based on this prediction from the climate model. Now, the climate models have predicted crazy high temperatures are going to occur. We are going to see floods like we've seen in Germany in a broad sense. But not getting down to the nitty-gritty of being able to predict.
A sense of increasing probabilities, right?
Right.
And these are the types of things we'll see more often,
Right.
but not forecasting like genie style into a specific date and time.
Weather is, the scientist or the scientists, the meteorologists are doing a far better job of predicting the weather. But their ability to predict the weather is, I don't know, what is it, 7 days at best, 10 days at best? And then just because of the complexity, they can't see beyond that. And then some people say, well, geez, the weather's, you can't predict the weather. How do you predict the climate? Well, the climate's different. You're looking at 30-year averages of temperature, rainfall intensity. That becomes easier to predict into the future.
So what's your takeaway from that one?
Don't read this article.
Okay. Well, I won't spend too much time on my next one, but I'll counter your flood with a drought.
Maybe that was a bad article. Yeah. Just pick it on the BBC.
This one's it's really just a couple lines, but it's about a drought in Brazil, and I thought this would hit close to home for Robert because what's happening because of this drought is that coffee beans are getting really expensive and hard to get. And
so I made Carrie. What did I make you?
You made me a beautiful espresso macchiato.
Okay.
But yeah, they're talking about this is another. It's the other fun thing about looking for articles is how many of them end up mentioning Texas. And this one's talking about a company here in Austin called Cuvée. And this drought in Brazil is forcing their prices up from $2.60 a pound to $3 a pound. And just talking about the volatility in this commodity is just like the volatility in oil, and but completely dependent on the climate. And the closing sentence on the article is climate change is making droughts like this one more frequent. And this is just in a marketplace report. That has nothing to do with our world, but this is what's showing up in all sorts of commodities right now.
Well, those are messing with coffee. Those are fighting words.
Yeah, it's time to get serious, people.
If that doesn't cause you to trade in your Suburban for a Tesla, nothing will. Well, my next article kind of relates to that, where it is bringing climate change down to affecting each one of us, but it's an article by CBS News on why climate change threatens your retirement savings. And there's a lot of concerns about business and gross domestic products or gross domestic product of not only the United States, but countries around the world. What's happening? Oh, that, yeah, we're having a hair issue over here. Okay. That, just from flooding, drought, wildfires, affecting um, the ability for business to occur. There's a statement here that roughly 2/3 of major global companies own buildings, plants, or other assets at high risk of physical climate change impacts. Think about how much of the world's population lives along the coasts. We're dealing with sea level rise as well as tropical cyclones coming in. Or even Uri that just happened that caused damage to a number of big businesses because of the power going down. So you need to watch out for climate change impacts on your portfolio, investment portfolio, your 401k if you're fortunate enough to have one.
Right. Right. Otherwise, just stockpile coffee. That might be a good investment. The next few that I have here just on reserve, they all have to do with kind of different perspectives on calling for government investment in infrastructure or incentives for agriculture, for example. So this one in particular, I loved this because it came from Teen Vogue magazine, which is an unlikely source.
Vogue, yeah.
But I thought it's called "The Dust Bowl offers key climate change lessons for the United States." Sorry, my print cut off. I was like, oh.
We had to reboot.
Yeah. But it talks about the Dust Bowl being a largely man-made environmental emergency, they really want to call out the fact that collective action reversed the course on those drivers that drove the Dust Bowl. And the article really it does a nice job recapping, and I again just was pleased to see that this is the kind of content in Teen Vogue these days. But
they've gotten pretty serious.
Yeah.
Teen Vogue, yeah.
Well, they ended up kind of linking the way that we came out of the Dust Bowl to the New Deal, and then talking about the Green New Deal. And I think this is interesting for a few reasons, because it kind of speaks to where younger generations are and how climate change for them has always been a reality, and it's been a part of their schooling, and they have a higher understanding than folks of our age do in general, I would say. And they're also really wanting to roll up their sleeves and do something.
And I see that in the classes I teach here at Texas State, where the students, and I teach a groundwater resources course, but they are very concerned about climate change, and like you said, very much want to do something, and they're pursuing degrees to do just that. The article I have also nicely ties into yours on the Dust Bowl. This is one from ABC News titled "How Will the West Solve a Water Crisis If Climate Change Continues to Get Worse?" And it's about Megadrought, and so the drought in the American Southwest over the last year or two entered Megadrought status, and I love that word, Megadrought. It kind of reminds me, not that I was ever a metalhead, but Megadeth. I just always hear crunching guitars and the vandals at the gates of Rome with Megadrought. But we're talking multi-decadal droughts, and the American Southwest has really been in drought since the mid-90s, which is why we've seen also in the news recently Lake Powell, I think, at the lowest level it's ever been, and didn't they just cross the threshold that they're going to have to start reducing water allocations? Which is some scary stuff. There's a Texas connection to that, because I believe, and I don't know if there's science to back this up, but just through observations, particularly when I was with the state during the 2011 to 2015 drought, is that drought was really kind of a pulsing of that southwestern drought out to a bigger footprint, and it came across Texas. And in fact, the drought that we were in before all this rain started
Yeah.
was an extension of that southwestern drought. And it appears to me that that thing kind of expands out from time to time. I think also you could make the argument that West Texas is part of that mega drought. Elephant Butte Reservoir has been low since the mid 90s. And a lot of the West Texas reservoirs are low since the mid 90s. Yeah, one of the cats walked by. I love cats. I meant to say some personal things. I love cats and tacos. That's Olmec. Cool.
All right. Well, mine also links to Megadrought, but I just wanted to quickly say that this article is an opinion piece that came off of CNN, but it's called "Farmers Like Me Want to Join the Fight Against Climate Change," and I found this actually the kind of I would probably end with this one and just tie a few other things together, but it's really a call for the government to invest and to help farmers. And they, the opening line here is, every season brings another unprecedented catastrophe. And this has become a way of life for people in agriculture. And just referencing that storm again, Uri, that we just experienced here in Texas in February, caused $600 million in agricultural losses. And that, includes something like 250 million plus in animal life lost and livestock losses. That wasn't calculated to the head, but I read something about that, and it says, we are in the current mega drought analysts describe as the worst in 1,200 years. So that's not nothing. But ultimately, this farmer calls out the Growing Climate Solutions Act, which I read about in a number of places. And another article I pulled was from Texas Farm Bureau's website, just talking about the Growing Climate Solutions Act, which has passed the Senate, but has still not fully passed into law. But there are folks calling for this left and right, basically saying it's not only an investment in helping farmers pay for sustainable practices and learn sustainable practices, which, again, if we can tie that back to the Dust Bowl article, that's how we got out of the Dust Bowl, is education and incentives and helping farmers learn how to be good stewards. And but this one actually includes carbon credits and how to participate in a carbon trading market. And so I think there's some real innovation on the way, and we're seeing big money coming from the federal government just in the last year in some of these programs. So,
well, what a great article. The Uri, and I have to confess that even with Uri, which had massive impacts across the state, including on most of us individually.
Yeah.
We lived through it. That I hadn't thought about the agricultural sector, and who else is there out there that is more in tune with what's happening with the weather and the climate than farmers?
Right. And who else knows patterns better? I mean, I bet they could beat any model you've got.
Yes. Yeah. So fantastic.
Yeah, the Farm Bureau actually launched a webpage on climate issues and resources for their membership. I don't think we would have seen that 10 years ago.
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And like you said, there are opportunities there. Ding ding ding, money.
Yeah.
With the carbon credits. So.
Yeah, really cool.
Okay, so now it's time to end on a what do we call it? A bright spot. Kind of some good news on the climate change front, or addressing climate change. Do you want to go first, Carrie?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm going to just tee one up for a future talk. I'm going to try to track someone down that we could talk to about technology I just read about called direct air capture, which is getting a lot of support and interest, and we're seeing some big investments coming from companies that are kind of known to be carbon producers like Exxon and United Airlines, for example. But there are huge investments going into this technology that can scrub the air and take out CO2. And a lot of this is going on in the Permian Basin of Texas. And so,
Which I didn't know.
yeah,
That's
which
cool.
is really cool. I was telling Robert about this earlier. There's an article from the BBC that it closes with the sentence that, if this is successful, the planet's climate may be decided in the oil fields of Texas. And wouldn't that be
That would be
the ultimate turnaround? But my real good news story is out of Texas A&M University.
Of course.
Gig 'em whoop for those of you out there. It's kind of nerdy. It's kind of like yogurt for the soil. It's talking about a probiotic soil technology that is reducing nitrous oxide emissions as much as 77% in some crops, and 75 to 77%. And for those of you who may not know, CO2 is always the headliner in the climate change realm, but nitrous oxide is 300 times more potent as a greenhouse gas.
Wow.
And it's also 10% of the source of that gas is agriculture. So this is really targeting a pretty substantial contributor of these nitrous oxide emissions. And it can be used. It doesn't have to change the way that farmers are applying fertilizer. It can go on with the fertilizer. So it's just an additive to the soil, and it's having return of an investment of 4 to 5 times per acre where it's being applied. So it's good for the yields, and it's a huge capture of the nitrous oxide, but it's also a carbon sequester. So it's just huge finding, and this is just come out on July 10th. So
That's neat.
Pretty new, and the product is called rhyolizer, like rhizome, rhyolizer. Rhizolizer. Duo. Soil probiotic. I can't really say it, but it's really cool.
Kind of amazing that came out of A&M. Yeah, those are some big words there.
Okay, that's enough.
Okay.
That's enough of that.
That's cool. And I'm a big fan of the technology or creative thinking that doesn't require a lot of change on the human side, because we all know it's hard for people to change.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the pushback that we feel in the media, or we hear people pushing back on climate change, people who are concerned about climate change, is that they're worried about the impact that changes are going to have on the jobs or economy. And I think like stories like this one, and the mention I had before of the direct air capture, is that these investments actually lead to jobs. They lead to increases in economic sectors, and so these are exciting things not only for the climate but also for other sectors that we care about.
Cool.
So,
even better.
Yeah. All right, what you got, Robert?
So I've got it's an article out of the New York Times titled "In Fighting Climate Change, What's an Individual to Do?" I just noticed, and I'm not sure why, it shows I'm getting old enough now that anybody that's younger than me, I refer to them as young, but this young lady, for some reason, putting a cat into a plastic box. I don't know what that. I think the climate change thing here is that she's using reusable boxes, but that's not an advisable way to pack your cat.
It's not. It's pretty odd.
I just noticed that. I didn't pick this article
she
because
looks really
it's
happy
cat.
about it too. Yeah.
And if I noticed that, I might have chosen a different article. But there's a number of things that people can do, and I know like hamburgers are a big deal these days. But speaking of not changing, I'm like, I don't know about giving up hamburgers, but. But if you feed cows kelp, I think that reduces bovine emissions. That has a positive impact on global warming. But one of the things I want to highlight here, because there's a number of issues they point out, is carbon offsets. And last year, 2020, in January, I had one of my New Year's resolutions was to carbon offset any flights I took. I decided I'm gonna do it. And admittedly, I took a look, because if it was going to be too many margaritas, it'd be like, yeah, I'm probably not gonna do that. But it was like, it was reasonable, and so that's what I was going to do. And I'm happy to admit that I've adhered to that.
Nice.
But of course, I haven't taken any flights since COVID, the pandemic. but that's one of the things that they talk about here. And so there's
So carbon offsets, and what else do they suggest?
I guess packing your cats in
Yeah.
plastic boxes. Really, what that's about is
Reusable material.
Reusable, because there's energy associated with making cardboard boxes and all that jazz.
Yeah.
And so even though, like you mentioned earlier, you started off as a radical recycler, and my wife and I are radical recyclers. But it is better to use reusable things.
Right.
Just yesterday, we have one of those Keurig coffee machines in the office. Have you seen that cartoon? It shows different ways of making coffee, and it talks about your personality type. Yeah, and then it says Keurig. It's like, who hurt you? But also Keurigs are, it's like plastic things, and it goes into the trash. But I have reusable, I guess, Keurig containers.
Nice.
And being something of a coffee snob, I can now grind my own coffee at home and stick it in there, and it's so much better. But that's another thing that they're talking about. They do talk about the diet in terms of doing that. Thinking about what your clothes are made out of. Solar panels, renewable energy. Can't remember if they talked about LED light bulbs, which use less energy. And I'm inherently lazy, and so you put one of those things in, you have to change them. Yeah, I have had one go out, so it must have been a defect in it, but I think they're supposed to last something like 3,000 years or something like that. Is that right?
That's plenty of years.
Yeah, that's plenty of years. It doesn't mention electric cars. I have been driving an electric car for the last 4.5 years.
Nice.
And you have an electric car, don't
I
you?
do.
You have one of those little
yeah.
bolts. I went a little more high class with a Tesla, the poor person's Tesla though, the Model 3. But how's your experience been with electric car?
Well, I love it. I live in Austin, and I commute to San Marcos, where the Meadow Center is at Texas State University, and I just I felt a moral obligation to not commute to my environmental job in a fossil fuel car. So I made the plunge, and got a Chevy Bolt, and I love it. It's so much fun to drive, and it's just really easy. I had a lot of people try to talk me out of it, and worried about the charging, and kind of that they call it range anxiety, kind of, will you have enough juice to get where you need to go? And honestly, it's just not been a problem, and I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's like I'd say I had a little bit of range anxiety with my first. I had one of those, at least one of those little BMW i3s. And it didn't have a real long range. They have short range.
Yeah.
And so I would deal with range anxiety initially, but then you kind of learn your car, and you kind of learn to how you can save and conserve and get home. I never ran out of juice with it.
And people that love to drive, like I was always someone that drove a stick, and like I love to drive a little bit over the speed limit, I'm going to admit, but electric car kind of gives you some of the same thrill, because you can really get to know your car, like you're saying, and how to manipulate it to optimize the battery life and really enjoy it.
And it's I don't know how you charge your car. Do you have a 220 at home or you do 110?
Right now, I'm just charging it in like,
110.
yeah, like they say, like a big laptop,
And
you know,
that's the other interesting thing is that I don't have 220 for the Tesla, so I
yeah,
just charge it at home
yeah,
like a laptop or your phone when you
yeah, it's the
charge up your
same.
phone.
Yeah.
Um, and and I commute to San Marcos too, and with the 110 charging, which only gets me, I don't know what it gets you, like 3 to 4 miles an hour of charging. But generally it sits most of the weekends, and so I get fully charged, and then with plugging it in every night, I can drive to San Marcos 5 times
Yeah.
and not
You know what I love
still
is
have power.
never having to go to a gas station.
Yes,
It's like the best.
that was a pleasure I didn't expect.
Right.
Like stepping in fuel or oil
Yeah.
puddles and
Not having to do oil changes. You never have to go to the dealer.
yes,
It's just amazing.
and the acceleration. I don't know. It's another one of those you talked earlier about, like technology. It doesn't require people to change.
Yeah.
There's some change with electric car, but it's like changes that are kind of more on the pleasurable
Yeah,
side.
yeah.
But so yeah, there's a lot of individual things you can do there. It does talk about water conservation. There's that energy water nexus, just to bring it back to water is,
Yeah.
using water more efficiently.
It'd be cool maybe in a future episode to talk about One Water, which is another thing that we work
Yes,
on a lot at the
yeah.
Meadow Center. But just there's a lot of neat technologies out there that are helping us solve some of these problems. And I think that's where we want to end on this high note, because there's a lot of bad news.
Yes, a lot of bad news.
But there's a lot of really cool innovation that's happening, and we want to celebrate that and pay attention to that and help encourage that.
Human ingenuity, Texan ingenuity, which you were talking about going on in the Permian Basin, which is awesome. I hadn't heard of that, so it's cool that that's happening. And in Texas has been an energy leader, and with the new world and renewables and what you just mentioned, it looks good that we would remain an energy leader going into the future.
Absolutely.
So with that, we'll wrap it up. I have no idea how long we have yapped. I feel like we could go another 4 hours.
I'm sure people will beg us for that, but we have to resist the urge.
But future shows, again, we're going to try to do this. Well, actually, I'm going to say try. We will do this every month. We will seek to get some guests on here as well, and drop us a line if you have any suggestions or there's something you really like. Let us know. I should thank Anna Huff, who's she's going to kind of put all this together and get it out there for y'all to hear.
Thank you, Anna.
Yes, thank you, Anna. She made our awesome graphics, and I still have to make some outro music. I think maybe something a little different.
Nice.
I haven't made that yet.
Okay. Right.
But I will, and I will add it to the end of this.
Nice.
So, any requests? You want more yodeling or
maybe some flowing water would be nice. Some
flowing water.
Yeah, what
okay.
do you think of that?
Yeah, we can do that. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, and look for us next month.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Carrie. This is fun.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Good lady.